I'd like to talk about DeAndre Hopkins for just a second now. So the no trade clause for Cardinals All-Pro wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins contract has voided due to his 6-game PED suspension last year. Okay. So for those of you that don't know, I'm going to assume that most of you do. Under normal circumstances, if a player has a no trade clause in their contract, it doesn't technically mean they can't be traded. It means the player would have to be okay with being traded, then void the clause, and they can be traded, which is what we saw with Russell Wilson last season. He had a no trade clause, but wanted to be traded, and therefore got to pick which team he was okay going to. And he told the Seahawks, hey, work out a deal with these teams. And then the Seahawks made a deal with the Broncos, which is one of the teams that Wilson was okay with, and therefore the Seahawks were able to trade him despite the no trade clause. Get it? Basically, the no trade clause just allows the teams to choose which teams they're okay being traded to, assume they are okay being traded. DeAndre Hopkins now no longer has that option. The Cardinals can, and with their cap situation, likely are going to trade him to the highest bidder. And there's two teams that need to do everything that they can to get him, and two teams I feel could be dark horse candidates and need to at least take a look at getting DeAndre Hopkins. The first two teams are obvious. Number one is Baltimore. Shout out to Kai. If the Baltimore Ravens manage to bring back Lamar Jackson, which seems to be up in the air at the moment, they need to get him a wide receiver one, which Hopkins very obviously is. We have seen teams with young quarterbacks, and Lamar is still young. We've seen teams bring in legitimate number one options, and it completely changes everything for their quarterbacks. And there's some very recent examples. Dolphins bringing in Tyreek. Tua has a career year. Eagles bring in A.J. Brown. Jalen Hurts makes a Super Bowl, has a career year. Bills brought in Stephon Diggs. Josh Allen had a career year that season. It very much feels like DeAndre Hopkins could very much have that kind of impact for Lamar Jackson. The second team that needs to do what they can to bring in D-Hop is obviously the Bears. The Bears are allegedly looking at trading Justin Fields, which could bring in some needed draft capital / trade ammunition to go and get D-Hop. And if the Bears do trade Fields, they will very likely be bringing in another young quarterback with that number one pick. And it would obviously behoove a young quarterback to be able to walk into Chicago and have an established wide receiver one like Hopkins, a solid wide receiver two option in Chase Claypool, and then a good to very good young tight end in Cole Kmet. And then even if the Bears don't trade Justin Fields, all of that would still be applicable for him as well. You are surrounding whatever young quarterback you have in Chicago with a rash of weapons and are providing him with the support base that they would need to succeed. Those are the two obvious teams that need to go get him. Here's two teams I feel like should at least take a look at going and getting DeAndre Hopkins. Number one is the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers clearly have wide receiver weapons in Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, but those two have something in common. They're never healthy. So while DeAndre Hopkins would be perhaps an unneeded luxury in Los Angeles, he would at least bring some stability to that wide receiver room. The best ability you can have is availability, and Justin Herbert would at least have someone he can rely on being on the field. And apparently Hopkins is very interested in playing there as well, so it at least seems like a mutually good fit. The final team that absolutely doesn't need DeAndre Hopkins but should consider trading for him is the Philadelphia Eagles. I can hardly consider a team that does not need DeAndre Hopkins more than the Eagles, but hear me out. This would likely be a one-season type of deal where they trade for DeAndre Hopkins, and then the Eagles push a bunch of that cap hit that they're going to get from the Jalen Hurts contract a little bit down the road, and they try to run it back just one more time this season with as much offensive weaponry as they can. It's worth a shot, and maybe I'm just being crazy, but if you're the Eagles and you come up just short in a Super Bowl where you only scored 11 points in the second half, I would have to consider adding another big-time playmaker. And the Eagles have the draft capital and trade ammunition to go and try to get D-Hop. They have 2 first-round picks this season. I don't know that I'll give up both of those, but maybe a 1 and a 2 this year to get a player like D-Hop. I don't know. Maybe that's just me being crazy, but it's fun to speculate.